look at, because May 29, this present administration clocked 5 years. And moving on, what should we expect? We took two sides yesterday on the program, one for and one against, and they all made their own statement. And tonight, we will be talking with the former aviation minister, who is also a lawyer, Femi Fani-Kayode. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I'm sure you have read the letter, and you have also watched some discussions on television on the letter. But let's take a look at what this man has written. And he reminded President Muhammadu Buhari that he is 5 years into the seat as a president of Nigeria, which he promised in 2015 that he would take everyone and he belongs to no one. So now let's hear from you. That letter, what is wrong with it?
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I commend the writer of the letter, who I happen to know very well. And I think the contents of the letter are self-evident, self-explanatory, absolutely necessary, timely, incisive, insightful, and most importantly, he was gentle, he was clear, and he was as respectful as he could possibly be to the president. I felt that the letter reflected the thinking of the overwhelming majority of the Nigerian people, both from the north and the south. And I think it's all the more significant that he, being a northern Muslim, not just a northern Muslim, but somebody from the ruling house in Gwandu, a Fulani prince, somebody that is well respected throughout the country and has been respected for many, many years, would go out of his way to put pen to paper and to write such a letter to the president at this time. And I think it's auspicious, it's necessary, and I commend him for his courage, especially in times like this, when those that speak against government usually have all kinds of sanctions meted out against them. So I commend him, and I encourage him to do even more.
All right, let's look at the 5 years of President Muhammadu Buhari. People have complained that there's this lopsided appointment, and the presidency and its supporters have all come out to even release statements saying that there's nothing like lopsidedness in the appointments made by President Muhammadu Buhari, that so far the president has been very fair. Do you think there is? Well, if I ask you if you think there is lopsided appointment, I'll be asking a statement a lot of person knows that what you will say. But let's take a look at appointment in the last 5 years. Is it anything to go by?
You know, let me start by answer this question by saying this. The Nazis that surrounded Hitler and Adolf Hitler when he was in power, anything and everything he did was commended and defended and justified and rationalized by not only himself but all those around him. Even when he was gassing 6 million Jews, gypsies and homosexuals and Slavs and blacks in the gas chambers, they rationalized and they defended it. But facts are sacred, opinion is cheap. And the facts are self-evident and clear for everybody to see. It's not my opinion, these are facts. And let's look at those facts. You talk about lopsidedness or non-lopsidedness. In the first time in our history, in a multiracial, multicultural, multi-religious country, you have a situation whereby every single security agency, and there are 17 of them, every single one of them, except for the Navy, is headed by a northern Muslim. Now, somebody was on your program yesterday and tried to argue that the position of Chief of Defense Staff was held by a Christian from the south, and that counted for something. It doesn't count for anything. It's an administrative position. We're talking about operational command. We're talking about those that control the troops on the ground. We're talking about those that have command over men in the field. Every single one of them in this country, except for the Navy, is in the hands of a northern Muslim. That is unacceptable. It is even dangerous. It doesn't end there. You go to the oil sector. We have the president himself, who is the substantive minister of oil. Then you now have the GMD of NNPC, which is the goose that lays the golden egg. He's a northern Muslim. Both substantive minister, GMD, northern Muslims, and every single subsidiary and sensitive managerial position in NNPC is also headed by a northern Muslim. This is unacceptable. That's the executive, and I could go on more and more about the executive. Virtually every key position in this government has been manned by a northern Muslim. Now, it doesn't stop there, unfortunately. It gets worse. If you go to the legislature, you have a situation whereby for the first time in our history, the legislature again is also not just the executive, but the legislature as well is headed by a Northern Muslim. The President of the Senate is a Northern Muslim. You go to the Federal House, we have a very good man there, a good friend of mine. I've known him for 40 years. He's a Southerner, thankfully, and he's doing very well. He's of the Muslim faith, neither here nor there, but at least he's there. Now, you also go outside of the legislature, you go to the judiciary. For the first time in our history again, you have the executive led by a Northern Muslim, all the key positions held by Northern Muslims, the legislature led by a Northern Muslim, National Assembly. You go to the judiciary, again, Supreme Court headed by a Northern Muslim. You now have a Court of Appeal. It was headed by a Northern Muslim. Now you have a Christian that ought to have been confirmed. They refused to confirm him. Let's hope that she will be confirmed. We're all hoping for that. Up until recently, you also had the President of the Federal High Court was also a Northern Muslim. Thankfully, that has changed now. Now, if you look at all this, you have a situation whereby it's clear that there has been a preponderance of appointments to the North and to Muslims by the Buhari administration. There's nothing wrong with having Northerners and Muslims in many places. But the truth of the matter is that in a country like this, we have always practiced the principle of federal character, balancing, and sensitivity. We've always carried other regions along, other faiths along, and balanced everything. That is the nature of our country. President Buhari came in, he tinkered with all that, he has done what he has done, and for anybody to attempt to rationalize or defend it, I think is quite unacceptable. It's actually an insult to our collective intelligence.
Now, before I go to give you some of the percentage of appointments released by sub-regions by the Buhari administration, I would like to ask you this question. Haven't we reached the stage in Nigeria, 60 years after independence, that we should be looking for merit rather than whether somebody comes from each of the zones?
It's a very, very good question. Sadly, the position and the truth is that no, we haven't reached that stage. First of all, the implication of your question is that those that are competent and have the merit to lead these agencies, the judiciary, the legislature, the executive, and all these key positions of security are only Northerners. I do not accept that. You have many, many highly qualified Southerners that could do as good a job, if not better. And I'm telling you that the peculiar nature of our nation and the construct of Nigeria from beginning right up until today is based on one thing alone, and that is equal representation, federal character for every single tribe, every religion, every faith, every ethnic group to feel part and parcel of the leadership. Every single president has done this, except for the one that we have today. What he's doing today has never happened before. It only happened once before, when he was military head of state, and he had somebody who was also a Northern Muslim as his number two. So it's clear to me, and it was obvious to me, that this is what President Buhari would do when he came to power. Well, he's done that, and he will continue to do it. What's different now is that you have people like Dangiwa Umar, people like Buba Galadima, and many, many others, even within the northern political ruling class, that are kicking against this. You have moderate Northerners who are saying, look, if we want to keep Nigeria one, we want to make everybody happy, we want to feel everybody as we want everybody to feel part and parcel of this country, for our safety and our security, and for the collective good of the country, you have to be able to carry Christians, Southerners, and Middle Belters along. And I could cite examples of people that think like that, who are very moderate and clear thinking. The governor of Zamfara is one of them. The governor of Bauchi is another of them. And there are quite a few in the north that do not agree with Buhari's Fulanization and Islamization policy. But for those of us that have been affected by it, to be told to sit back and say, well, it's okay in the name of whatever, that is unacceptable. It will never happen.
All right. Now, there was a publication today, and he's already standing before me. And in that publication, they released figures, and they said the Southwest has about 33.7% appointments in this government. Is that not enough for you?
Let me put this to you, and well, I can answer that simply and clearly. A government can appoint somebody to be a doorman or a gatekeeper, or maybe SA on public toilets or something like that, and that is an appointment. But it's not a meaningful appointment. It's not a key appointment. It's not a substantive appointment. It's nothing special. It's almost insulting. So you can list all the appointments that they give. The key question is this: all the key appointments, 9 out of 10. in this government over the last 5 years have gone to northern Muslims. And that is unacceptable in a country that is meant to practice federal character and is meant to ensure that we have a balance in terms of north, south, Christian and Muslim. But quite apart from that, it's also important for us to take note of the fact that, look, people are getting tired of what's going on. For them to come out with a list to say the Yorubas have whatever percentage you said is completely unacceptable, and it's disingenuous. And let me give you one example of the impunity of these people. Just one example, okay, since they want to talk about specifics. When ministers were appointed this time round in 2019, when he came back into power, and by the way, every single state is entitled to have a minister. So he's not doing anybody a favor by appointing a minister for a state. So he has to do that by the Constitution. But this time around, when he came back, you know what they did? Okay, there are 6 zones. And if you look at the ministerial portfolios, out of the 6 zones, the Northwest, where the president comes from, has, I believe I'm right in saying, 11 substantive ministerial slots. The Southwest, which supported him, 50% of the Southwest supported him in 2019 and 2015, have 5 substantive ministerial portfolios. The rest of the country, the North Central, the Northeast, the South and the Southeast, have 3 each. Just 3 substantive ministers. The rest are all ministers of state. What does that tell you? That in itself tells you something, that even where each state has the constitutional right to have a ministerial portfolio, what he has done is given the Southeast, the South, the 5%ers as he calls them, and the Northwest, and the North Central, that is the Middle Belt, minimal number of substantive ministries, and he's given the Southwest 5, that is 50%, just under 50% of what his Northwest has, and he's given himself 11. That is unacceptable. And let me say this: it has never happened in our history under any democratic government that this sort of thing is going on. In a normal setting, in normal society, we would say, okay, fine, let's talk about merit, let's see who can do what, and just put who you want there. But in Nigeria, it's complicated, it is complex, and we need to be able to carry everybody along so that everybody feels part and parcel of this nation, and nobody feels like a second-class citizen or a slave.
Now, you mentioned the NNPC and all that, but you forgot to also mention that the Minister of State for Petroleum is from the South-South.
He most certainly is from the South-South. I spoke about the substantive minister, and you know what happened only during the last administration, when the former Minister of State came out and said contracts were being awarded by the GMD, who has just passed on, may his soul rest in peace, and he was also a Northern Muslim, without recourse to him, and he knew nothing about it. And he alleged that billions of naira worth of contracts were being awarded by the substantive GMD of NNPC at that time, and with recourse to the substantive minister, which was the president, that he was left out. I have little doubt, in fact, no doubt whatsoever, that the same practice is going on today. So if you tell me that you put a cosmetic minister of state for petroleum affairs from the Niger Delta area in order to make it look as if they have a say, then what you're telling me is that you think I'm a fool. The truth of the matter is the power lies with the substantive minister, who is the president, and the power lies with the GMD of NNPC. And the power lies with all those subsidiaries of NNPC, PPMC, PPRA, all those wonderful subsidiaries and all those key managerial positions under NNPC, which are being held by Northern Muslims. There's nothing wrong with Northern Muslims. Let me make this clear. I have nothing against them. I have many friends amongst them. What I'm saying is that let there be a balance. And I'll also say this, I'll put this to those that dispute what I'm saying. If the position were reversed, and you had Christians in all these positions at the legislature, the judiciary and the executive, the presidency, NNPC, the security agencies, how would they feel? And I don't think they would feel rightly, they would feel very bad. I don't think they would feel very good about it. And I'll be the first to say that this is wrong. This country is a secular state. It doesn't matter, what your faith is. You should be able to, or what your tribe is, you should be able to enjoy a key position as is reflected or as is demanded by the principle of federal character.
Now, like I said yesterday, the president seemed to have decided to dust some of the files on his table at this time, and this is coming from the new chief of staff who he just appointed. And it seems he has realized that people are complaining that there's no evenly distribution of appointments by his government, and now the man feel this is the right time to do it. Is anything wrong if he says, okay, I will do this at least to keep Nigerians as one?
If President Buhari were to do that, he would win my respect, and I'll be the first to commend him for it. But you know, those that hold their breath for that will hold their breath forever and probably end up dying. I doubt he will do that. You can dust files as much as you like. But it doesn't mean you're going to do anything. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. But I tell you, if he were to retrace his steps and accept the fact that this is a country of equal citizens, regardless of tribe, regardless of religion, that everybody has a role to play, nobody's a slave, nobody's born to rule, nobody's born to be ruled, and nobody's a 5%er, and nobody's this or that, and we're all the same before God, and before the law and before the Constitution. If he were to do that, I'll be the first to commend him for it. I would retrace my steps and I'll stop criticizing him. However, I would not wait for that, because his mindset, in my view, will not allow for that to happen. What you have today, it's not just Southerners and Christians from the Middle Belt or Middle Belters criticizing him for what he's doing. You now have bona fide, commendable, reasonable, rational Northern Muslims of Fulani stock and extraction who are saying what you're doing is wrong. And that's the hope for Nigeria, that his own people will be able to come out and say that. Dangiwa Umar is somebody, like I said, I know very well. And again, I commend him. He used to be my polo captain many years ago at the Lagos Polo Club. And even then, he displayed courage when he spoke out boldly against the most draconian, tyrannical regime this country has ever known. That was Buhari Part 1, when he came in as military head of state. For 2 years, that man spoke out openly when nobody else would speak against that government. And he was part of those that ensured that that government did not last. Again, he made another intervention over the June 12th crisis when Chief Femi-Kayode won a free and fair election. It was annulled. And he, as a young officer at the time, supported MK Abiola and resisted the whole concept of the annulment and the decision to annul. And he lost his commission. He resigned from the army out of protest for that. And since then, he's been making such interventions. Now, he's been very quiet over the last few years. And it's very, very instructive that he chose to come out at this time. And let me just add this. Dangiwa is not... He doesn't just speak for himself. He speaks for a very, very wide constituency of people. I remember when we were in government, with Obasanjo's government, and he criticized our government. I was speaking for the president at the time. We responded to him forcefully at the time, but he gave us a good run for our money. And, you know, he was a worthy adversary. And like everyone knows, I always commend my adversaries when they're good at what they do. He's a formidable adversary. He's a great critic, and he's a man of honor. And I am very impressed with the fact that despite the fact that many from his area may not agree with him, certainly those that support Buhari, he has stood up and he said enough is enough. And I hope more will do that.
Now, some persons will say from the moment President Muhammadu Buhari won the election in 2015, you never liked him. That's why you're sounding this way. And is this a personal thing? Just because of what you feel for the man Buhari?
Thank you for asking me that question, because I think it's a very fair one. And if anybody really has that opinion, let me disabuse their minds right now and put it on record. I've always said, and I'll always say, I have absolutely nothing personally against President Buhari. If anything, I've always had respect and admiration for him. I've written and I've said it over and over again. He was one of the most gallant and courageous soldiers that we ever had in this country when he marched against the Chadian rebels when they had the nerve to attack us in our territory. I believe it was in the early 80s, 1982. President Shagari was president at the time. He not only pushed them back to the Chadian borders, he also pushed them halfway across Chad and almost took the capital of Chad. It took the intervention of our President Shagari to call him back and say, don't take the capital of Chad, don't conquer the nation of Chad. That is the Buhari that I've always admired and that I've always liked. And many people don't know that I became quite close to him. Again, in 2013, we met a number of times. We spoke extensively. But my own view, my own worldview and mindset is diametrically opposed to what I believe to be his. His own view, in my view, is totally different to mine. I believe in the establishment of a modern nation state where everybody is equal. Religion plays less of a role in governance, and every ethnic nationality is treated equally and in a sensitive way. In my view, his own worldview and mindset is one in which he believes his own people are superior, his own faith is superior, and that he should impose his will and impose his people on the rest of us. And it is on that principle that we disagree. Outside of that, I have absolutely nothing against this man. I've always, and I respect his office, but I also reserve the right to criticize forcefully, especially where I see that my country, the country that I was born in, and that I will die in by the grace of God, is falling apart or is in the danger of imploding or exploding as a consequence of his policies and of his actions. And that is why I've dedicated myself, despite persecution of all, in all shapes and sizes over the last 5 years, to continuously speak against what I believe are his policies. So it's not about him, it's about his policies, it's about his mindset, it's about the way he's destroying our country. He has divided us, he has turned us into the world's capital for poverty, he has pauperized us, he has turned us into a laughingstock in the international community, he has destroyed the hopes and aspirations of millions of Nigerians, and worst of all, he has put us in a situation whereby for the first time in our history, since independence, the majority of Nigerians are saying it's time to self-determine and redefine Nigeria and perhaps, go our separate ways, which I think is so unfortunate that this should be happening under his watch. But that is what is happening, even though they don't like people to say so.
But as a man who has been in the corridors of power, you've been with former President Olusegun Obasanjo, you've been in the corridors of power. If you feel that President Muhammadu Buhari is not living up to expectation, what have you done?
Yes.
What have you done?
What have I done? Well,
yes.
what I've done over the last 5 years, Ijoma, because your pretty face, you've interviewed me a number of times here, and quite apart from that, I've been on virtually every television station in this country, in the international community, and I've also written. I write columns. I had so many columns. They closed so many of them. I'm always speaking. There's not a day that I have not gone out of my way, stuck my neck out, stayed in this country, not run away, and criticized him constructively and preferred solutions. I've also prophesied and said what would happen, and everything that I've said since 2015 has come to pass, and I've come back to remind Nigerians. I'm also saying that there is still hope, if only we can get rid of this mental slavery that we all indulge in. Let me give you an example of that. Somebody is killed in America, very sad. The story of George Floyd. He's killed in America. And rightly, the whole world, there's an outrage. He's killed before the television cameras by a policeman. And rightly, the whole world goes totally berserk, and everybody's upset. People are rioting. People are protesting. Rightly so, I might add. Now, in our country, let me tell you this. In our country, Nigeria, every day, thousands of people are killed. If you doubt this, go to Taraba, go to southern Kaduna, go to all over the Middle Belt, go to Plateau State. Thousands of people are slaughtered on a daily basis in this country, either by Fulani herdsmen, Boko Haram terrorists, or by agents of the state. Killed in cold blood. Christmas Day 2016, people don't like to talk about the history. 2016 Christmas Day, and I will never forget this. 800 Christians were killed in southern Kaduna on Christmas Day and Christmas Eve. Wonderful Christmas present, wasn't it? And no Fulani herdsman was arrested. It's gone down all the way to the south, southeast, south, southwest. They're killing our people there. Nobody's talking about it. Boko Haram, they're slaughtering people, but yet under this government, more Boko Haram prisoners have been released, more have been reintegrated into the army, and massive sums of money have been paid in the name of ransom, which strengthens them by this government than none other. And it goes on and on. Under this government, over 1,000 Shia Muslims were killed in Kaduna. They say 300 under the report. We all know was over 1,000. Under this government, somebody called Dasuki was locked up for 4 years. Nothing has been done. So many things have happened. And yet we sit here and we say, we should just accept it. Well, you say, what have I done? Yes. I've continued to speak about these things. I've spoken about them. I'm not in government, but I fought against this tyranny. And every single person that supported Buhari in 2015, all the key players, whether it's Obasanjo, whether it's T.Y. Danjuma, whether it's IBB, whether it's Sowore, whatever they are, all of them, except for one, has now come round to my way of thinking, and they're saying you were right and we were wrong. And now let's join forces and try to speak truth to power and stand up to this.
Sorry,
so I think I've done pretty well.
There's this argument that those people you just mentioned, they have political interests. That's why they're throwing tantrums at the president. Whatever the president does, people like you don't see him as doing anything. And how do you not disabuse the minds of those who see you as never accepting the Buhari administration work?
Well, listen, I'm sorry to use these words because I know we should be a little bit sensitive where we're on air. But if I do, well, let me not even use the words I wanted to use.
Okay.
Let me put it like this. Let me put it like this. If I see a very, very ugly lady, may God forgive me for saying this, I cannot continuously say you are beautiful. I'd rather advise her to put on a lovely dress, do some plastic surgery, and try to look better. Okay? This government, to my mind, is very, very ugly, and that's the best way I can put it. And I will not indulge in saying things simply for the sake of saying them and pretending. People are dying. People are suffering. We've lost our sense of humanity. We have become a nation of sociopaths. Why do I say this? So much blood is being shed. IPOB youth are being slaughtered and have been slaughtered over the last 4 years. People are being killed every day. And yet we act as if it's no big deal because it doesn't touch and concern ourselves or our family members. I am not of that ilk. I must speak out against such. Now, if you don't mind about people being killed, perhaps you'll mind about the economy. The power of your money, Naira, everything has gone down. We have now borrowed $80 billion. We're now in debt to the tune of $80 billion. And this government is still borrowing. When this government came in, we were owing $15 billion. I'm talking about the foreign debt. We're now at 80. This is a cause for concern. And so many other things. So you'll forgive me if I continue to criticize them. Somebody has to, and I'm happy to do so, despite what I've suffered as a consequence of it. But let me just add this. You spoke about these people that I mentioned, revered former heads of state, highly respected individuals who have absolutely nothing to gain, who transcend politics in many ways, and who Buhari relied on for his election in 2015, and who Buhari courted at that time and begged for support. They erroneously and in my view wrongly supported him at that time. Now they're biting their fingers and they're speaking and saying we were wrong and we should and we're sorry about what we did and we will try and fix the problem. They didn't sit at home and say, well, it doesn't matter, we've almost lived our days and we've had a good run for our money, whatever happens to Nigeria should continue to happen. They've stuck their necks out, and to say that they're saying this for political reasons, I think it's most unfair to them. These people have, they've run their term. These are the great founders, these are the great nationalists of this country that fought so hard for this country, risked their lives for this country, and have given so much to this country. And they are worried about where this country is heading. If it was just politics, then we could say, okay, it's just politics. 2023 will be here soon, and perhaps we'll have a change of government. But it's not just politics. What Buhari has done, and Dangiwa touched on it in his letter, and so did Obasanjo when he wrote a letter a couple of years, about a year or so ago. What he's doing is he's toying with the very essence and with the very foundation of the Nigerian state. Okay. And he has divided us to the point that if we are not careful, this country will end up exploding. And nobody wants that. Right. Nobody wants that kind of trouble. Nobody wants that kind of sadness.
Okay, thank you very much. Our time is up. I would like to say thank you for your contribution, Femi Fani-Kayode. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much, Joma. Shalom. Stay safe.
And you too.
Bye for now.
Now, let's quickly take some messages before we go. I have this one coming from Sonny tweeted 15 minutes ago. Sonny as Moni Daffy. It says, some of us, million of us, have parents from other states, but born in different states. My parents were from Delta, but moved to Adamawa State over 70 years ago. We are in the millions. Where do people like us belong? That's the question he's asking. Then I have this one coming from Forunshaw. Forunshaw is tweety.